Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Tonight's big stories. Comelec suspends the printing of ballots for the 2025 midterm elections after the Supreme Court ordered the poll body to reinstate candidates.
And President Bongbong Marcos, who captured an overwhelming mandate with 31 million votes, sees his net satisfaction rating drop by 13 points in SWS's most recent survey.
And Japanese Foreign Minister Iwaya Takeshi in Manila for a courtesy visit expresses grave concern over escalating maritime tensions in the South China Sea and rejects any unilateral attempt to change the status quo in the region.
Let's call this a setback for the Commission on Elections. With only 117 days to go before the national and local elections in May, the poll body now has to start over with the printing of ballots, discarding 6 million ballots already printed over the last 2 weeks. And this is the first time in Philippine electoral history that a reprint is happening.
That's right. The Comelec has suspended first printing following the Supreme Court's temporary restraining order or TRO on the cases of 1 national candidate and 4 local bets. The poll body earlier declared as nuisance candidates senatorial aspirants Subair Guintum Mustafa and Charles Savellano, who is seeking a congressional seat in Ilocos Sur. The Comelec also canceled the certificates of candidacy of ITA leader Chito Bulatao Balintay, eyeing the gubernatorial post in Zambales, and Florendo de Ramos Ritualo Jr., who is running as Sangguniang Panglungsod member in the 1st District of San Juan City. Former Caloocan Representative Edgar Erice was likewise disqualified for allegedly spreading false and alarming information after he questioned the Comelec's contract with Miru Systems.
Now, the High Court ordered the reinstatement on the ballot of all 5 candidates. Now, that means Comelec has to make changes in the candidates' database and its election management system. A big challenge will be tweaking the order by which the names of candidates appear on the ballot, with the numbering apparently affected by the revisions. The poll body has to print a total of 73 million ballots for the May 12 elections.
So what will the suspension of ballot printing do to the election schedule? There's only one body that could answer that. So let's bring in Comelec spokesperson Rex Laudianco, who joins us now over the phone. Welcome back to The Big Story, Attorney Laudianco.
Magandang gabi po, Ma'am Regina, Ma'am Pauline, and I'm Sean, and good evening to all the viewers of The Big Story.
Good evening, and thanks so much for making time out for us. First off, 6 million ballots, is that correct? What is the exact number we're talking about that have to be reprinted?
Okay, that's correct. 6 million ballots, and it accounts for the ballots of the overseas voters, wherein we'll be using elections using the system, the automated counting machines, because the internet voting is not allowed in those jurisdictions. We also have 100,000 ballots for the local absentee voting, 1.4 million ballots for the final testing and sealing, an equal number of ballots for the mock elections, as well as the training of the electoral boards and deputy support officers. We also have printed the national and local election ballots for the BARM, as well as the Caraga, and as well as the BARM parliamentary ballots. All of these ballots were already printed and stationary at our national printing office.
So all of those total 6 million ballots, overseas voters, BARM elections, national elections in BARM, et cetera, all of these total 6 million, is that correct?
That is correct. More or less 6 million.
Okay.
The inventory is ongoing since this morning.
And do you have an estimate of how much this will cost, both in terms of the losses, in terms of the ballots that you have to discard now, and also the reprints? Do you have an estimate of how much all of that will cost?
An initial estimate yields around more or less around 130 to 150 million pesos, accounted by 22 pesos per ballot. And including the services for the printing of the National Printing Office personnel, their overtime pay, as well as the supplies, the ballot paper, and other toners. We have yet to account the cost of the reprinting of this ballot come the time that we're already prepared with a new set of ballot page template.
Okay, what concerns...
130 to 150 million only accounts for the losses. It doesn't yet account for the reprinting at this point?
That is correct, because we really have to reprint all the 6 million ballots to be able to give all these affected voters the respective ballot.
Okay, another concern, no, Attorney Rex, is that these ballots that you are... I forgot my question actually, but go ahead.
So let me just follow through with the money question. Do we have the budget? Do you have the budget for all of this additional costs that clearly you had not accounted for at the start?
That is correct. This is something new for us. The Comelec Finance Department is already assessing our budget. Indeed, we will be needing to use our savings if there are any. And if these savings are not enough, we really have to go to Congress for supplemental appropriations in order to carry through with the reprinting of the 6 million ballots.
Okay, now I remember my question. I was concerned about where you would get the additional money. And on top of that, because this has never happened before, I was wondering whether there are kind of like guidelines on what will happen in case, ballot printing has been suspended at any point in the process. Is there some sort of precedent we can look at or some guidelines?
Comelec is prepared for this. We have a contingency plan in place, and that's why immediately upon receiving news and confirming from the Supreme Court website of the temporary restraining orders issued, even before receiving our formal copy, we had immediately suspended the printing of the ballots and tasked our information technology group to update, to change and amend the database. And then in the following days, including today, we are now amending and changing the election management system. Come tomorrow, we'll be starting with the amendment and changes to the automated counting machine and the consolidation and canvassing system with the hope that if a new certification is needed, we will be able to do that by Saturday or Monday, so that after the certification, we could generate the new ballot paper templates, put it up on our website, serialize it, and then and only then can we begin the printing of the ballots. We have to start again with the ballots that I have enumerated, because these are the first ones to be printed in order for them to be deployed first. As you could see, the first ballots that we print are those farthest to be deployed and had to get out of the Comelec warehouse the soonest.
You said you're going to have to fall back on the savings first, and then if that's not enough, you go back to Congress to ask for more money. How much in savings does the Comelec have at this point?
Right now, I don't have the figure for savings, because the savings come from the savings from the procurement, the bidding. Those are because we're getting the lowest prices. The savings or the leftover from the approved budget from the contract cannot be considered as savings of the Comelec.
All right, Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but so far this is just a temporary restraining order granted on these candidates. But if the Supreme Court grants in favor of Comelec in terms of the disqualification, what will that do to the ballots?
Will not be changing anymore the ballots. We don't need to take out their names. It only takes an order coming from the Comelec implementing the decision of the Supreme Court in case that these persons are really disqualified. All we had to do is declare all the votes that they have garnered as stray, and even if they win, these votes will not be counted and they will not be proclaimed.
Is that automatically implied in the Supreme Court decision, Attorney?
That it already happened before, that a person who was able to secure a temporary restraining order was ultimately disqualified. What Comelec do in this case is that we consider these votes as stray. This is also the same situation in cases where a candidate supposedly had to be taken out but was left in a ballot, in case of cancellation of COC, in cases of Lewison's candidate, and in cases of disqualification. If they still are in the ballot and they do get votes, and even if they win, we declare these votes as stray, and we will not be proclaiming these candidates.
Yesterday, we were talking to former Ilocos Governor Chavit Singson, who, as you might know, has withdrawn from the senatorial race, although I don't think he's made it official yet. So if the Supreme Court upholds the ruling, does that mean you get a chance to take his name out of the ballot as well?
It depends on when Mr. Singson will be personally submitting his affidavit of withdrawal. Comelec rules or certificates of candidacy requires the personal appearance and personal submission of an affidavit of withdrawal. The only instance that will be allowing a withdrawal of a candidacy when the person himself is not being present is in case of medical incapacity. In that case, the representative has to bring a doctor certification that indeed the original candidate is medically incapacitated to appear before Comelec.
While we're on the subject, Attorney Rex, there are two other candidates off the top of my head. That's Lino Cayetano from Taguig, as well as from Marikina, Marcy Teodoro. They have also some issues with the residency jurisdiction. What's going to happen to these cases and their names on the ballots? Are the timings going to coincide with the reprint, etc.?
As of now, their names are still in the ballots and even in the ballot page templates because their cases have yet to be decided by the commission. That's why they are still in the official ballot.
And,
Sorry, what do you mean the Comelec has yet to decide? I thought Comelec has rejected the residency transfer petition by Lino Cayetano.
That is correct, but they have filed their respective motions for reconsideration, and these MRs are still pending before the commission and bank.
Oh, I see. So the en banc has to decide on that. Any idea when that might happen?
I don't have the timeline, and I cannot say for sure when these decisions will be coming out. But as of this moment, their names remain to be in the ballot because their cases are still pending with the commission and bank.
Right. So like you said earlier, whether or not what happens to these cases, then their names and the votes that they gather will be declared as strays if, for example, the on-bank decides to disqualify them.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That is correct. And the decision of the commission and bank becomes final and executory.
So with that, Attorney, are you aware of any other cases pending that could still be included in the ballots that you haven't included yet in the printing? I mean, now that you will be reprinting all these 6 million ballots, could there be, kumbaga, pahabol pa na mga kandidato, kumbaga, if their TROs are also granted by the Supreme Court?
That is also a possibility because we know for a fact that there are several cases also and still pending with the Supreme Court, and we don't know what will be the disposition of these cases. Will the Supreme Court issue another round of temporary restraining order? And if that happens, again, we have to restart the process. We're going back to zero because every time there's a change, we really have to change the whole system from the program to the ballot page templates, including those programs installed in the automated counting machines. And in fact, the ballot printing is at the back end of all these processes.
Just a question, Attorney Rex. To put it simply, what's the deadliest deadline for the restart of the printing process for us to be able to make it without a hitch to the midterms?
Okay, although I don't have the exact date, but we really have to be finished with the printing of the official ballot by the first week of April because the deployment will actually start by the last week of March. So if any delay in the printing of ballots comes after this, and if we go beyond the April 4th deadline, what will suffer is the deployment of these ballots and other machines and other paraphernalia. As we all know, when we deploy all this, we deploy them in kits, we deploy them in bundles, so that those who the receiving electoral boards, the voting centers, will be receiving them as a whole. So that is the dangerous part. It's not actually the production part, but the deployment part, which will suffer most in these cases. And if a deployment will not push through, then you know what will happen. There will be a delay in the conduct of elections.
You also mentioned earlier, after the first question of Reg, that some of these 6 million ballots are supposed to be used for mock elections and training. Are those also going to be affected by the lack of, the quote-unquote legit ballot for 2025 midterms? Or can those be conducted still with something else?
You know, the mock elections is dependent first on the certification of the election management system, the automated counting machine, and the consolidation and counting system. The mock election is not a requirement simply of Comelec. It's a requirement of Republic Act 9369. It's a precursor and a requirement for the certification of the whole automated election system. That is why we really have to conduct it. What we did was to push back the date instead of doing it this Saturday on January 18. We're hoping that if we were able to finish with all the programs, we will be able to print the mock election ballots first so that we could proceed with it on January 25, and then we'll be proceeding with the printing of the other ballots onward.
Okay, Attorney, if I could shift gears for just a second. I wonder if you've seen the PCIJ report on election spending and premature campaigning which said basically candidates have spent 4 billion pesos in ads even before the filing of the certificates of candidacy in October, and about half of those accounted, Representative Camille Villar and Senator Amy Marcos accounted for half of the total advertisements aired from January to September of 2024. Of course, Comelec has rules on premature campaigning. I wonder, number one, have you seen that report? And number two, what are we doing about it?
I haven't seen that report, but I believe that indeed, perhaps the expenditure is really close to that one identified by the PCIJ. But the problem is our law states, Section 15 of Republic Act 9369 states that those persons who had filed their certificates of candidacy are only considered as aspirants at this time. They will only be considered as candidates, and all the prohibitions, all the regulations will only be applicable to them on the first day of the campaign period. For senators and party lists, the day one of campaign period is February 11. For local positions, it's March 28. It is also the same with the ruling of the Supreme Court in Peñera versus Comelec, where it affirmed Section 15 of Republic Act 9369. So right now, the status is there is really no premature campaigning anymore, because all the regulations will only be applicable to all these persons on the day one of the campaign period. Technically, we can't do anything about it. That's why we're encouraging the people. We're encouraging the voters to look at these people. If they're spending this much right now, if they cannot wait for the proper time to campaign, are you going to vote for these people? So that this should be part of the consideration of each and every Filipino voter.
So once again, we're running into a technicality here because, yes, they may not be officially called candidates. They are aspirants. They officially get called candidates once the
election period starts.
For senatorial candidates, that's February 11. And for local politicians, that's another date. But anyways, that's just a technicality because, anyone driving through EDSA or any of the major thoroughfares can, gets bombarded by all of these billboards and advertisements and even online, right? I'm sure you yourself have seen a few. You're saying essentially that Comelec can do nothing about him at this point?
That's correct, because we cannot penalize them. We cannot even compel them to include these expenditures in the required statement of contributions and expenditures, because the SOSE only accounts for the contributions and expenditures which they will be spending on the day one of the campaign period. But in all this, Comelec has been the first one to call for the amendment in the law. We believe that an amendment to Section 15 of Republic 9369 is absolutely necessary. We have to go back to the law as we have implemented it with the Omnibus Election Code in the Barangay and SK elections, wherein once a person files a certificate of candidacy, he is automatically considered a candidate. All the prohibitions will be applicable to that person. That is what Comelec is calling for, and that is why we're really pushing for an amendment to these laws.
Right, so definitely not illegal. So I think it's just more of a moral issue now for voters. Sorry, Regina.
No, it's a moral and ethical issue, and I do have a issue with passing the burden on to the electorate in that sense. But in any case, I do understand what you're saying, that there needs to be an amendment to the law, which, given the state of Congress right now, I wouldn't hold my breath about it. Guidelines, though, in terms of midterm elections, as far as the midterm elections go, what are your guidelines in terms of candidates posting their faces or their names on relief goods or assistance or any form of aid that's given to, the lower income households?
Right now, technically, they cannot be considered as campaigning because partisan political activity requires the first element of their being a candidate. They're not candidates. But we're really telling our voters that to be cautious, but to look at these people in such a way that are they really helping you in times of need? Yes, you are receiving goods from them, but is their intention really to help you, or are they courting or soliciting your votes come the election day? So what we can do right now is to look at the behavior of the candidates. But you can be rest assured that come the day one of the elections, Comelec will really implement the law. That is why in the exemption requested by the DSWD for their AKAP, AIX, and other programs, the DOLE and their TUPAD, the DOH and their MAIT, one of the new impositions, conditions imposed by Comelec is that any politician, any candidate in whatever form of nature, even their staff, cannot be present during the distribution of this aid. Also, another new condition imposed by Comelec is that the guidelines that they had submitted to Comelec in the implementation of this program must be done to the letter. And they have to continually and periodically report as to the other conditions, like it cannot be used to influence the election, it cannot be used to further the interest of a particular candidate. And of course, they must be able to report to us the exact expenditure as requested to be exempted.
But again, all that kicks in February, is that right?
February 11th for senators and party lists, and for local candidates, March 28th.
Doesn't kick in for another couple of weeks, at least for senatorial candidates. Just very quickly, timeline in terms of, forget timeline. You were talking about policing rigorously once the law kicks in. Is that going to apply to online campaigning as well? And how far could you go in terms of policing social media content?
We really have to admit that there are no laws regulating social media, but that doesn't mean that Comelec cannot do anything about it. That's why we have partnered with practically all the social media platforms. We had, through our resolution, required the registration of social media channels to be used for the campaign. So outside of those registered with us, we will be asking the social media platforms to cancel, to deactivate, to take down, and perhaps suspend the accounts which didn't follow Comelec resolutions. We will also be looking into it because any violation of Comelec resolution may result in the disqualification of that particular candidate. So also, we have tasked the social media platforms to look into the use of artificial intelligence in propagating fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. And of course, we have to ensure that all the costs of the boosting and the payment for the political ads must be reported to Comelec not only by the candidates, but also the social media platforms which had accepted these contracts.
That's very good to hear. Can ordinary citizens report candidates or aspirants, and how could they do that?
That is what we have been doing since 2022 elections. You can report it through the social media channels of the Comelec, and you can even do that anonymously. And even if you have identified yourself, we will assure you that we will keep your identity confidential. That is what we have been doing since 2022, because upon your information, just tell us the violation. If you have screenshots, please send it to us so that we could ask Facebook, we could ask the Google, we could ask ByteDance to preserve the evidence. We could continue with the investigation, gather all the evidence, and file the necessary cases, be it criminal or even the disqualification, as the case may be.
Quick follow-up, Attorney Rex. Was anyone ever, because you've been doing that for a while, like you have to submit your official social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, all the platforms, right? But can you tell us from the last elections, was anyone actually scolded, penalized, or even disqualified for overspending?
For overspending, we have thousands of cases. We have thousands of cases pending before the court and pending before the commission. And we have disqualified prominent figures, even governors, for violation of our spending rules. And so for social media regulation right now, we have a different and a new set of regulations. Before, they just have to register their social media accounts, and the only privilege that they have is that they may enjoy the e-rally platform of the Comelec. But right now that we are partnered with all the social media channels, we have extensively discussed the measures that we will do, and the takedown will really be coming from here on. We will be deactivating their channels and collecting evidence so that any violation of our Comelec rules will result into disqualification. And if they have propagated false, fake news and information, we will be filing cases against them as an election offense.
Okay, very good to hear. Voters do have a lot of power on their hands. I hope you took down notes. We're going to have to leave that there. Thanks so much for talking to us tonight. Comelec spokesperson, Attorney Rex Laudianco.
Moving on now to another day, another survey, and this one mirrors other polling results that we have been reporting on in the past couple of weeks. And the theme is that net satisfaction ratings for both the president and the vice president have been dropping significantly. In this survey conducted by SWS, or the Social Weather Stations, between December 12 and 18 last year, 51% said that they were satisfied with President Bongbong Marcos's performance as chief executive, while 32% said they were dissatisfied. And that resulted in a net satisfaction rating of plus 19, which the SWS classifies as moderate. However, that is a big 13-point decline from his ratings in September, when he garnered plus 32 net satisfaction, classified by SWS as good. By regions, the drop was biggest in Mindanao, where the president lost a whopping 34 points, going from plus 16 in September to minus 18 in December. The numbers for the vice president aren't too far off. 52% of adult Filipinos say they were satisfied with Sara Duterte's performance, a 5-point drop from the last survey. And those not satisfied climbed slightly to 31%, which leaves her with a net satisfaction rating of plus 21, which is about 6 points lower than her September rankings. The poll was commissioned by the Strat-based group, and CEO Dindo Manhit said the sharp decline in Marcos's ratings was driven by frustration over the government's handling of inflation, while the decline in Duterte's numbers had to do with, quote-unquote, her persistent refusal to clarify the use of confidential and intelligence funds.
That dovetails with another survey also conducted by SWS, which is the number of Filipino households experiencing involuntary hunger has jumped to its highest since the COVID-19 pandemic. SWS's December 2024 survey revealed 25.9% of Filipino families experienced being hungry and without food at least once in the last 3 months. That is 3 points higher than the September 2024 figure and the highest since the record high 30.7% during the COVID-19 lockdowns in September of 2020. Among the regions, Mindanao had the highest hunger rate at more than 30%, though this is actually slightly less than its September 2024 ranking. Balanced Luzon is at second place with 25.3%, a huge jump from the 18.1% it recorded in September, followed by Visayas and then Metro Manila. Most of those who said they were hungry experienced moderate hunger, meaning they were hungry only once or a few times within the last 3 months, while the rest were all severely hungry or had experienced hunger either often or always. Both moderate and severe hunger rates rose in December compared to September of 2024. And it's also worth noting that those who said they were hungry were often also poor. SWS conducted the survey face-to-face to a total of 2,160 adults from December 12 to 18 of last year.
We're going to take a quick break, but up next, motorcycle taxis may be a common sight on roads now, but they're still illegal. We speak to one rider party list on efforts to legalize this mode of transportation. When the big story returns, stay tuned.
Welcome back. Here's still in the big story here on One News. Almost 5 years since Congress approved the pilot test for motorcycle taxis, still no law in sight. The LTFRB is now warning that some 60,000 riders are bound to lose their jobs. According to LTFRB Chair Teofilo Guadis, they've already submitted to Congress and Senate their recommendation to legalize motorcycle taxis back in May last year. But the current Congress only approved the indefinite extension of the pilot test period, which initially was supposed to last only 6 months. So, if the 19th Congress ends with no law legalizing motorcycle taxis, they will in effect become illegal again.
Let's discuss this issue further with One Rider Party List Representative, Kong Colonel Bonifacio Bosita. Kong Boni, magandang gabi. Thank you for taking our call.
Yes, ma'am. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Okay, Kong Boni, narinig niyo naman po yung report. I'm not sure kung narinig niyo rin po no, yung speech ni Senator Grace po kahapon. Sinasabi nga niya na, I think by now dapat maipasa na natin to. Ano po yung thoughts ninyo? And also since One Rider po ang pangalan ng inyong party list, na number 2 party list ng eleksyon, ano po ang, nasa na po tong bill at ano po yung chances na maipasa ito?
Actually po, itong House version po, transmitted and submitted na po ito sa Senate last July 30, 2024. 5 months ago po, nasa Senate na po ito. At sa parte po ng House ay wala na po kaming ano dito sa motorcycle taxi.
So kumbaga na ang bola ay nasa Senado na para maipasa ito ng tuluyan.
Yes po, eksakto po. At yan po ay nabanggit nga po ninyo, more than 5 years, almost 6 years na po itong sinusubukang maipasa itong batas na ito po.
Pero yung yung pilot test po nag-originate po diyan sa lower house sa Kamara. Gaya nga po ng naiulat, pag hindi daw po kumbaga naipasa ang batas, by the end of the 19th Congress, kumbaga illegal na ulit mag-motorcycle taxi kasi technically tapos na yung pilot test. Tama po ba yung pagkakaintindi namin dito? At ano po yung pwedeng magawa ng ating mga lawmakers para man lang kumbaga masolusyonan kahit maipatawid hanggang 20th Congress?
Actually po, itong pilot program, matagal na pong tapos ito at lampasan na kasi wala namang pilot program na years ang binibilang At tama po kayo kung after nitong 19th Congress, hindi naman po sinasabi nating illegal, pero ang nakikita po natin dyan, may pamamaraan pa rin po para maipagpatuloy po itong programa. But then, ito po ang aking binabanggit ay opinion ko lamang sapagkat ako po ay isa lamang sa mga members ng Committee on Transportation dito po sa House of Representatives.
Well, kung hindi po ito sa batas within this Congress, ano po yung mga nakikita nyong risks o mga problema na maaaring lumitaw, lalo na po sa mga habal-habal?
Just the same, kasi may law enforcement naman po dyan na kapag ka po habal-habal, pag sinabi po kasing habal-habal, illegal po ito at hindi po sila covered nitong mga approved service provider, ay ipagpapatuloy lang naman po. Wala namang mababago kasi katulad nga po ng nabanggit ko sa inyo, matagal na po tapos itong pilot program. Pero hindi naman po natin pwedeng isakripisyo po ang panig ng mga motorcycle riders, ganoon din po ng mga customers nila. Kaya kung itatanong po natin kung matapos ang 19th Congress at hindi pa rin ito maipasa, kung titingnan po natin, back to zero ito sa 20th Congress.
And just a follow-up, Kong Boni, kasi 60,000 riders daw, yun ang estimate. Di natin sure, baka nga mas marami pa doon ang maaapektuhan nito or at least mangangamba sila, di ba? Kung anong magyayari, nasa limbo, hindi malinaw yung patakaran. Nakakausap niyo po ba sila? Madalas po ba sila umakyat dyan sa opisina ninyo at magdulong ng kanilang mga problema at mga hinaing?
Actually po, may mga problema sila pero kung titingnan po natin ay so far na-address naman po. Ang maganda lamang po nito kung maisabatas ito, mare-regulate po at mas mapoproteksyonan sila.
But what are they saying, Congressman? Ano yung sinasabi nila sa inyo in terms of their worries about this issue?
Siyempre po at ang gusto nila ma-legalize yung kanilang hanapbuhay dahil marami pong mga questionableng practices or ini-implement po nung ibang mga kanilang service provider. Pero ito po ay napag-usapan na po sa mga naganap na hearings at so far yung mga problema pong ito ay hindi na rin nila binabanggit na sinasabing nangyayari pa rin. Katulad po nitong incentive. Dati po meron diyan na service provider, TNBS, na nagka-cut sila doon sa tips na dapat sana po sa riders lamang mapupunta. So, all in all, kung titingnan po natin, hindi naman masyadong malaki ang problema dahil sa tagal na nga po nitong pilot program na ito, parang na-correct na yung mga dapat i-correct. Ano po? At ang talagang hinihintay na lamang po ng mga riders ay talagang malegalize po ito.
Okay, ang next question ko sa inyo, Kong Bonnie, medyo kabig lang ng konti, no? Ito ba yung reason kung bakit tatatakbo kayo para sa Senado sa upcoming midterm election since nandun nakabinbin yung bill at mukhang nandun siya naipit? Plano nyo ba siya i-champion kung kayo ay pagpalain?
Alam niyo po, isa lang yan. Pero nung ako po ay major pa lamang sa PNP, nakita ko na po yung mga problema particularly ito pong mga pang-aabuso hindi lamang po sa mga riders kundi sa mga truck drivers and other motorists nationwide. And ito pong kung nadinig po ninyo itong Fair Traffic Apprehension Act na kung saan pag mali ang panguhuli o inabuso ang motorista, kapag nag-contest po sila, dapat po makompensate yung danyos. Unfortunately, isa po ako sa masipag na kongresista na nagtatrabaho sa loob at labas ng kongreso, pero nananatiling nakabinbin po ito sa Committee on Transportation dito sa House. Kaya talagang aminin po natin na medyo masama ang loob ko na dapat sana ay naipasa na ito. So, yun po ang isang bagay na nagtulak sa akin para tumakbong senador. And may mga problema pa rin po tayong nakita na napakadali naman ang solusyon pero ang kailangan lang po talaga dedikasyon. At alam na alam ko po na madali naman itong masusolusyonan kung lolobin ng Diyos at susuportahan tayo ng mga kababayan na maluklok po tayo sa Senado. So, meaning, hindi naman po tinitingnan natin yung problema lang ng mga motorista, kundi yung mga problema rin po ng ating mga kababayan. At kung ito po ay i-detail ko sa inyo, ay talagang napakarami po at ayaw ko naman banggitin dahil baka parang lumalabas po na nangangako lamang ako para maluklok sa Senado.
Okay, pero kung nabanggit nyo nga po, no, problema ng mga rider, pero at the same time, pag-usapan din naman po natin dun sa mga tumatangkilik nitong mga motorcycle taxis. Isang concern din po kasi dyan is the safety of those who ride. Paano po ma-ensure yung safety ng mga riders din ng mga motorcycle taxis, at the same time, ensuring na rin yung convenience na nga by using these apps?
Yes, ma'am. In terms of security and safety, ano po, katulad po nitong mga nagdaang araw, may mga na-aksidente po, na ospital, at dumulog po sa ating opisina. So far, responsible naman po itong mga service provider at talaga naman pong sinasagot nila yung mga pangangailangan, yung hospitalization, and actually, naka-insured naman po sila. And other than that, nagsusupport naman po itong mga ito dito po sa mga riders na naaksidente at ganoon din po doon sa kanilang mga pasahero. So, kung titingnan po naman natin, ay napaka-responsable lang naman po nila. Ang kailangan lang po talaga, mas maging legal ito para siyempre, iba na po talaga yung legal para protektado po ang bawat isa. Hindi lamang po yung mga riders, kundi ganoon din po yung kanilang mga customers.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Kong Bonnie. Babantayan po natin kung anong mangyayari. Meron pa naman pong panahon, no, sa 19th Congress. But for tonight, thank you so much for your time. Maraming salamat sa oras, Congressman Bonifacio Busita ng One Rider Party List. Thank you.
All right, we're taking another quick break, but right after that, Philippine sports patron Ricky Vargas gets another title as chef de mission to the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, California. The details of that when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You are still on the big story here on One News.
Outgoing U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Bongbong Marcos spoke over the phone last night, just a few days before Harris steps down from office. The call followed a recent trilateral discussion between the U.S., the Philippines, and Japan, which focused on regional partnerships. The two leaders reaffirmed the importance of maintaining strong U.S. and Philippine ties that the Biden administration reinforced. Marcos further acknowledged Harris's significant contribution in providing a strong foundation for continued collaboration between the two nations. He said he had high hopes to, quote, build on that and continue to work in the years to come. They also addressed peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region, particularly in the West Philippine Sea, a key issue discussed in the trilateral with Japan. This is the third and likely final official meeting between Marcos and Harris, who last visited Manila in November 2022.
Still on foreign relations, we're just 5 days out before U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes back the White House, and one of his key cabinet nominees, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, cleared his first hurdle on the way to nomination, which is the U.S. Senate's Armed Services Committee hearing. But boy, was it a long and at times very contentious hearing. For more than 4 hours, Hegseth was grilled over everything from accusations of sexual assault and drinking in the workplace to his inexperience to lead a department with 3 million employees. But perhaps most worrying for those of us in this part of the world is that he was unable to name a single country in ASEAN or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, sparking worries over the future of U.S. support for the Indo-Pacific. Here's the exchange he had with Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
Okay, speaking of Japan, President Marcos welcomed Japanese Foreign Minister Iwaya Takeshi at Malacanang for a courtesy visit today. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to stronger economic partnerships for mutual prosperity. Afterwards, both sides held a bilateral meeting presided over by Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo. And that is where Takeshi raised grave concerns over tensions in the West Philippine Sea.
I am gravely concerned that actions heightening tension in the South China Sea are repeated. Issue over South China Sea is a legitimate concern for the international community because it directly links to the regional peace and stability. Japan strongly opposes any attempt to unilaterally change the status quo by force or build up tension in the region. We strongly ask for easing of tensions.
Japan also reassured the Philippine side that they will continue to provide continued development and maritime security assistance.
Discussed today our commitment to pursue our trilateral cooperation between the Japan, the United States, and the Philippines. And this is an issue that, of course, we reaffirmed in the tele-video conference between the President and the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of the United States. And this is an issue that we will also continue to discuss with the United States. I think we've made a number of agreements and undertakings in connection with the joint vision statement. And these are issues that we will continually discuss amongst the three of us.
And before we go, the Philippine Olympic Committee announced key leadership appointments today. Ricky Vargas was named chef de mission for the Los Angeles 2028 Olympics, while Mr. Al Panlilio will be at the helm of the Aichi Nagoya 2026 Asian Games. The announcement was made earlier today during the POC's first General Assembly of the year. The upcoming 2028 Olympics have been shadowed by the recent wildfire disasters in Los Angeles, sparking debates on the preparations for the major sports event.
Al Panlilio was also named the new chief of the Management Association of the Philippines, so he's taking on two big roles in this week. But you're right, the Los Angeles fires have really put a dampener on the preparations for the 2028
It's not
Olympics.
just the fire,
There's big
actually,
questions over whether they could push through.
Right, and there's also been some controversy on America has been actually accusing or doubting WADA, which is the authority in terms of
anti-doping
doping
anti-doping,
agency,
right?
that's right.
So, but there's like a rule that you can't, if you don't respect WADA as the authority in doping,
Then can you be
your
part-
hosting privileges could be
Revoked.
revoked.
Oh, wow.
So that's also an ongoing dispute.
So again, big
So-
questions over the
So many
hosting
unprecedented
of the 2028 Olympics.
and so many questions coming to the fore. But I think everything is pretty valid as sports develops. There used to be no WADA. We didn't care what people took as
But for
supplements.
Filipinos, what I'm actually monitoring is boxing could actually be scrapped in Los Angeles, and that we know boxing is one of the sports that we usually dominate, right? So
in the last Olympics,
Yeah.
that was already talked about.
we already talked
So
about.
is it going to happen, or is it still
I
like
think
a
it's still being
50-50?
debated. Yeah. So, but hopefully it's included because
Why
that's where
would
we
they
get most of
scrap
our medals.
boxing and still include breakdancing. I don't know if breakdancing is still going to be included, but
I think it has something to do with the governing body of boxing and with
There's
the
issues
I don't
with
get
that.
that.
There has been
Okay.
issues within the boxing community as well.
But you
Okay.
know who does know about the answers to some of these sports questions are the
There you
people
go.
coming up
But,
next.
these
So
guys
we're
over
going to say
there.
goodbye.
That's it. We are going to say goodbye. That's it for the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
Stay tuned because, as promised, coming up next is Play-by-Play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton Calao. Hey, guys!
Thank
Who
you. I
have
thought
the
we had
answers.
new anchors for play-by-play joining
Oh,
us.
I know.
The more the merrier. Tito Sean, Ate Reg, Boss Pawi, by all means. Where is the pasalubong?
No, we're still
He's going
talking
to
about
be
that.
bothering you every night until
Every night
Until
it
James is
materializes.
Tim Tam.
We're
just
going
kidding.
to leave now.
Okay, fine. But as you guys were talking about, congratulations to Boss Ninong Ricky Vargas and also to Ninong Al Panlilio. Lahat natatawagin ko ng Ninong.
Oo nga eh. Pansin ko.
Ninong talaga.
Sa
Gusto mo
binyag ba to
Ninang,
sa confirmation?
Ninang, you want to be Ninang?
Confirm na ba yan?
Oh,
Have they accepted?
yes.
Okay.
You, do you accept?
No. I turn you down right now for the record.
Okay,
live
Wala
TV.
na yung chocolates mo. It's not going to
Okay,
happen.
fine,
Sorry,
fine.
inside jokes.
Sorry,
Game
sorry.
over.
Thank you once again to the ladies of the big story, Tito Sean, Boss Pawi, and Madam, Ate Reg, Ninang Reg. We've got updates from the NBA and the PBA Commissioner's Cup on tonight's show. Plus, Troy Rosario set for his return to the Gilas Pilipinas pool.
And we've got volleyball stars changing teams, including Risa Sato and former UE